It was the greatest empire the world had ever known. From the windswept isles of Britain to the deserts of Africa, the Roman Empire ruled with unmatched power, vision, and ambition. It built roads that lasted centuries, cities that still stand, and ideas that would shape law, politics, and war forever. At its peak, Rome was more than an empire. It was the world's beating heart. Yet the stronger a power becomes, the more fragile it becomes inside. What happens when greatness turns to greed? When unity breaks into civil war? When enemies press at your gates and rot spreads from within? The story of Rome's fall is not a simple one. It is a tale of ambition and betrayal, of glory and collapse, of vision and blindness. But no empire, no matter how mighty, is immune to time. What happened to the empire that once ruled the world? Why did Rome fall? Rome's story began in 753 BCE, as legend tells us, with twin brothers Romulus and Remus, raised by a she-wolf destined to found a city forged in blood. Before it became the capital of an empire, Rome was a village of shepherds and warriors. Legend says it was founded in 753 BCE by Romulus, who slew his own brother Remus to claim it. A city born from rivalry and destined for dominance. In its early years, Rome survived invasions, political turmoil, and monarchy. But by the 6th century BCE, it cast off kings and forged a republic, one of the earliest systems of elected leadership the world had seen. Power belonged to the Senate and the people. 2 consuls ruled, but always with checks. The republic was not perfect, but it was stable enough to grow. Rome's true strength, however, lay in its legions. Unlike many armies of the time, Roman soldiers were highly trained, rigorously organized, and fiercely loyal to the Republic. By 264 BCE, Rome had already taken control of most of Italy. Then came the Punic Wars, 3 brutal conflicts against the mighty Carthaginian Empire. Enter Carthage, a mighty city-state with a navy to rival any in history. Rome's clash with Carthage would become one of the most brutal rivalries the ancient world ever witnessed, the Punic Wars. The Second Punic War alone saw nearly 2 decades of bloodshed. Hannibal, the Carthaginian general, crushed Roman legions at Cannae. But Rome endured and struck back. In 146 BCE, Rome destroyed Carthage. Not just its army, but the city itself. Burned, salted, erased. Rome now controlled the Mediterranean. With great power came great ambition. The Senate grew corrupt. Generals became kings in all but name. None more powerful than Julius Caesar. In 49 BCE, Caesar crossed the Rubicon, an act of open rebellion. Civil war erupted. Rome's democracy crumbled beneath Caesar's popularity and military genius. The Ides of March, 44 BCE. Julius Caesar, betrayed by those he called friends. But his death didn't save the Republic. It doomed it. Caesar's adopted son, Octavian, would defeat all rivals. In 27 BCE, he took a new title, Augustus, the Exalted One. Rome was no longer a republic. It was now an empire. Under Augustus, the Pax Romana began, 2 centuries of peace and prosperity. Rome became the envy of the world, a superpower unmatched in history. But every peak has its edge, and beyond the grandeur, the seeds of decline had already begun to take root. At its height, Rome controlled more land and people than any empire before it. From desert to forest, ocean to mountains, its banners flew everywhere. But beneath this golden facade, pressure was building. The government grew bloated. The Senate, once a beacon of Roman virtue, became a battlefield of corruption and privilege. Wealth flowed upwards. The gap between rich and poor widened. Many Romans, especially in the provinces, felt forgotten, taxed, and powerless. Defending such a vast empire stretched Rome's military to the breaking point. Frontier after frontier demanded more troops, more resources, more attention. Meanwhile, enemies beyond Rome's borders, barbarian tribes like the Visigoths, Vandals, and Huns, watched. They waited. The 3rd century AD brought chaos. In just 50 years, Rome saw over 20 emperors, many murdered by their own guards. The empire was in constant crisis. In 284 AD, Diocletian seized power. A reformer, a stabilizer. He split the empire in two, eastern and western, to manage it better. It brought temporary peace, but it also weakened the West, where instability and vulnerability would only grow. The cracks were now visible, yet many still believed Rome was eternal. But history, like empires, has no favorites. While Rome fractured from within, danger gathered at the edges. Fierce, mobile, and determined, tribes once seen as disorganized began forming armies. The Visigoths, Vandals, Ostrogoths, Franks, and most terrifying of all, the Huns. To Rome, they were barbarians. To their people, they were liberators or survivors. Attila, the scourge of God, led the Huns in a campaign of terror. Even Rome's strongest cities feared his approach. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. Rome was sacked for the first time in 800 years. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, marched into the Eternal City. They looted, burned, and left a scar that would never heal. In 410 AD, the unthinkable happened. Rome was sacked for the first time in 800 years. The Visigoths, led by Alaric, marched into the Eternal City. They looted, burned, and left a scar that would never heal. The Western Empire bled, city by city, border by border, while the Eastern Empire, centered in Constantinople, endured. The West was being carved away. Rome, the conqueror of nations, now stood surrounded, its legions broken, its coffers empty, and its enemies inside the gates. By the late 5th century, Rome was a shadow. Its armies were no longer Roman. Its leaders were often puppets. Its economy broken. The dream of empire slipping away. The Eastern Roman Empire, Byzantium, watched from afar, focused on its own survival. The West was left to die. In 475 AD, a boy was placed on the throne. Romulus Augustulus. A name echoing the empire's beginning, Romulus the founder, Augustus the first emperor. But this boy would be the last. 1 year later, in 476 AD, a Germanic chieftain, Odoacer, marched on Rome. The boy emperor was deposed without a fight. No grand battle. No fiery resistance. There was no final conquest, no singular villain. Rome died from 1,000 cuts. From within and from without. Greed. Division. Ambition. Pressure. Time. It rose with myth. It ruled with might. And it fell like all empires do. But the idea of Rome never truly vanished. Its laws, its architecture, its language, its spirit echo in every modern empire, every great city, every republic. Rome may have fallen, but Rome never really left. Rome is long gone. Its emperors turned to dust, its armies scattered. But its story, its rise, its glory, its collapse still echoes in our streets, our governments, our ambitions. Rome gave us architecture, language, law, and government. But perhaps its greatest gift is the warning it left behind. Because Rome didn't fall in a day. It fell slowly through corruption, economic collapse, division, and complacency. Familiar words, aren't they? The ruins of Rome still stand, not just as stone and story, but as warnings and as whispers. Rome teaches us that no civilization, no matter how powerful, is immune to decay. Power unchecked erodes. Wealth unequal divides. Pride blind destroys. The story of Rome is not just about the past. It's a mirror for every nation, every empire, every generation. This is history remembered. If we want to build a better future, we must remember the past.